Welcome to the Sisters in Crime Writers Podcast. Everyone has a unique writing journey, so join us for conversations about those journeys from the writers themselves. It's Julie Henriquez, the Executive Director of Sisters in Crime, and I am really delighted to welcome Isabella Maldonado to the podcast this week. Edgar Award nominee and Wall Street Journal best-selling author, Isabella Maldonado wore a gun and a badge in real life before turning to crime writing. The graduate of the FBI National Academy in Quantico and the first Latina to attain the rank of captain in her police department, she retired as the commander of special investigations and forensics. During more than 2 decades on the force, her assignments included hostage negotiator, department spokesperson, and precinct commander. She uses her law enforcement background to bring a realistic edge to her writing, which includes the Agent Nina Guerrera series, Agent Daniela Vega series, Detective Veranda Cruz series, and Sanchez Heron series, co-authored with Jeffery Deaver. Her books are published in 24 languages and sold in 52 countries, which is amazing. Welcome to the podcast, Isabella.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's start where I always start. When did you say to yourself, I want to write a novel?
In earnest, probably one night when I was working the midnight shift on patrol. It was the dead of winter, and there really wasn't much going on at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I had been listening to a crime book, and I thought to myself, you know what, I think I could do that, and I think I could put like a realistic edge into it.
Yeah.
So I think that was the first time in earnest I thought, yeah, I'll do that. But that was a long time before I retired.
And so did you, you had that idea, you're listening to a book. Did you start to work on figuring out craft, or did you just let that germ form in the back of your imagination for a while until you retired and you had the time to really focus?
It was a little bit of both. I was thinking the whole time, and actually, I don't think I've ever shared this before. It's kind of funny, but I did enter a contest. There's a contest every year to see if you can get into an anthology, and Mystery Writers of America anthology, and I entered the contest, and I didn't win, but the experience at least really got me the bug. And I was still on the job at that point, but I knew I was going to be retiring soon. So I thought, well, let me take a stab at a short story. And that really gave me the bug. I realize now why that story didn't get there, but only with the experience I have now, I understand. But at the time I didn't, but it didn't bother me. I'm just like, hey, that's the first thing I ever wrote, so let me just keep going. I did not let it discourage me at all.
Well, with your career, I would imagine letting things discourage you would not have gotten you to where you are. So tell me about learning the craft.
Yes.
Tell me about developing that.
Exactly. So I had done academic writing, and I'd done police writing, and, a lot of it with, reports and other kinds of things. But creative fiction is completely different, or at least it should be, unless you're not doing your job properly. So I realized that after I retired, that's when I thought, okay, I'm really going to do it. And I understood that I had a lot to learn. I was very, very methodical about how I did it. And I will say that I spent 5 years studying the art and craft of writing before I wrote my first novel. In that intervening 5 years, I did publish 3 short stories. They were actually accepted and published. That also taught me a lot about what I was doing. But when I say I learned the art and craft of writing, I joined groups like Sisters in Crime, Mystery Writers of America, International Thriller Writers. Those were the big, and then my local chapter. And I actually ended up becoming the president of the local chapter of Sisters in Crime, the Phoenix Metro chapter. And so I really got involved that way. And what I found was networking with other authors, some published, some unpublished. And then, and I cannot emphasize this enough, attending conferences, going, and it's a huge investment of time and money. And it was a serious thing to do, to be like, yeah, I'm going to take time and I'm going to travel and so it was funny because the very, very, very first conference I attended, I got off easy because it was Left Coast Crime and they were in Phoenix. They had come, that's where I live, and they happened to be coming to Phoenix. It was like the perfect timing. So I was able to go to my very first conference. I loved it. And I thought, I learned so much. I'm going to keep going to conferences as much as I can manage it. And the other thing I did was I got, it started just from the library at first, and I got every single book I could lay my hands on about the art and craft of writing from all kinds of people. And then after I pretty much burned through the library, I started, buying and downloading audiobooks and ebooks and also regular books. And I am not exaggerating when I say I've probably read well over 100 books over the years. I still like to read books on writing just because I feel like I can always pick up new things, and it's constantly evolving. So that was kind of how I spent 5 years. I almost feel like it was like getting an MFA.
Yeah.
But without the, the degree, but just very specifically in crime writing or fiction writing, that's what I needed to learn how to do.
So I love that part of this, because I think that folks underestimate sometimes how long and how much work goes into learning the craft that you never master. You're constantly learning more things or reading something again and getting another layer of knowing from it. So for you, again, I'm going to allude to your amazing career before this amazing career, that sort of skill building, I'm imagining, but correct me or tell me about it, was part of what you had to do when you were in law enforcement, is not assume you knew how to do something. It's like, okay, I want to learn this skill and it's going to take me a while to learn it. So I'm going to be open to learning it.
Absolutely. I am not someone who comes from a law enforcement family.
Yeah.
I did not grow up with it. No one in my family had ever done anything like that. As a matter of fact, they all thought I was nuts when I told them I was going to go to the police academy. They really didn't understand. And I'll never forget my older brother telling me, why don't you just, quit playing around and get a serious job, working computers or something. It was really funny. He didn't have any appreciation for what I was doing. But again, I didn't let that stop me at all. And it was really, really difficult as a female. And this is back in the late 80s when I went through the academy. Several squads I was on, I was the only female. It was not a welcoming place, I will tell you that. It was very, it was like, basically it was just constant hazing in the first couple of years. So it was a definite challenge, but yes, I didn't know really what I was getting into. And so, yeah, I had to go in there again with that learner's mind. And I think that's that's something that I think always is a good thing to have. You have to have the humility. And I'll get to writing. I'll talk about this in regard to writing because I'm gonna wrap it together because I think this is something anyone could benefit from. So when I first went to the academy, I mean, I didn't know how to do like police response driving. They had to send me to the driver training track, and I had to learn how to drive like 100 miles an hour, and and all the things that get involved and everything with that. I had to learn how to shoot. I had not fired a gun. I had to be taught how to do all that. I had to learn defensive tactics and control holds and all kinds of things about weapons. I mean, you have to go in there and have a completely open mind and a real sense of humility, and the willingness also to understand that you're going to make mistakes sometimes, and you do your best. And in that sense, when I started writing, it was the same thing all over again. What's funny is in law enforcement, I had gotten to the very upper echelon of that. Being a police captain, I was in charge of a lot of people, and I had a lot of responsibility. And after 22 years, you work your way up there. I had to start all over again and leave whatever ego I had to be completely at the door. And it was the same thing where the very first time when I was looking to get a short story published, it was accepted for publication, but I had to go through the editorial process. And I hadn't done that. And it was really, and this is what I really want to encourage all writers to do, is to just be extremely accepting of the editorial process. Understand that the editor is only there to help you. And the other thing, and it's funny because I got to be friends with my editors over the years. I had various ones, and I always get to be friends with them. And they always talk about how it's really nice to work with me because I don't fight with them. And I'm like, people fight with you? Why? And they're, why would anyone do? But I understand in the sense that when you're writing something and your editor doesn't understand it and they say, rephrase, or they just completely misunderstand and say this doesn't work or whatever, that the temptation is to be like, well, it makes perfect sense to me and I don't know why you didn't understand. That's not the right approach. So I always have the approach of, if the editor doesn't understand something or has a problem with something or questions something, then it's my fault and it's my problem. I need to fix it, because any reader, well, some readers will and some readers won't have the same issue. So I don't want to have readers scratching their heads. And because I write police procedurals, there's a lot of jargon and a lot of police procedure and a lot of that kind of stuff that does end up in my books. And sometimes the editors are like, what is that? And I throw a little Spanish in there too. And, so I find ways to explain things and do it not in a way that try to make it seamless, but also explain things and motivations behind characters and what they do.
Lots to unpack there, but we're going to talk about a couple of things here, because that's, first of all, that advice as far as the editorial process is so important. And it's so hard not to be defensive and to say, but this, of course it's her aunt. How did you not know that, or something? And it's like, well, but let's talk about when you know something so well and you're including it in the book. But you don't want to info dump and you don't want to jargon, but you want people to get a sense or to become empowered because, now I learned something. So those context clues, tell me about how to do that well, because I think that's really hard when you're an expert in an area, not to come off as an expert and maybe write things that people skip. You don't ever want to write the part that people skip.
Exactly. And especially I write thrillers, so they had better be quick, and they, cannot. Yeah, they're not a leisurely character study. Although the characters are very compelling, but you find other ways
Right.
to get there. So you're right about the expertise. And actually, what's kind of funny is I try to find a different way in to that. And here's what I'll tell you. And actually, it's a piece of advice I got from one of my very first editors, actually. And she said to me, because I was still, kind of more struggling with the I'm telling the story. And she got with me and she said, look, here's the thing. You're very unique out there in that a lot of people right now, especially in fiction, on television, in movies and books, the female cop or the female agent is like very popular to write. A lot of men write that. They'll have female lead law enforcement type characters. And she's like, you've actually done it. You've been a woman in law enforcement.
Right.
Tell us through your character, tell us, what is she feeling? What is she thinking
Mhm.
as she's in a high-speed pursuit, or as she's in a fight, or as she's trying to lock somebody up, or as she's interrogating someone, or as she's, rescuing a victim, or in a shootout, or whatever it is. Give us the actually, like, what is going on inside of you. And I thought, oh, that's so interesting, because to what your question is, which was a very insightful question that you asked me, I just assumed everyone would know. I really
Mhm.
did. I thought, I don't need to explain. I mean, clearly, if you're like in a foot pursuit and you're chasing someone, you're going to know what that feels like, right? Well, apparently not. And
Right.
it's yeah, I don't know why, but I just made the assumption anyone would, but so I started going back and I had to like pull things from my own experience. And I think that's when things really, really, gelled in that area. And that's why, I mean, so far, all of my leads are female law enforcement, but that will not necessarily always be the case. I mean, I write a huge variety of characters. My books are kind of known for having a big cast. They're not all in law enforcement, but my leads tend to be. But I think it does help to pull from your own experience and look at it from a fresh perspective. And then, as far as the info dumping part, I I try to keep it as minimal as possible. And I tell you what, it's a challenge because I look at some of the comments and some of the feedback that I get from readers, and some of them say that they can't always follow, and others say that I explain too much because of television. Everyone
Yeah.
thinks they know what really goes on, so I can be a little shorthand. And I had it explained to me this way by a different editor. And this was not for me, but she was explaining that she was giving some notes to someone who was writing legal thrillers, and it was a completely different author, and she said to that author, "Look, everyone knows, thanks to TV, everyone knows what the inside of a courtroom looks like. You do not need to describe it." So I kind of took that and I absorbed it, and I thought, okay, I don't need to say too much more about the precinct inside or what. Everybody can get like a mental picture. And my descriptions of those kinds of things became more sparse, but the emotions became more rich.
Hmm. Well, and those emotions are so unique and from a point of view that is refreshing and important. It's an important new voice, really well told because of your experience, your lived experience.
Mhm.
That's a good combination.
I also think I draw from the experience having dealt with so many victims,
Yeah.
especially being a female in law enforcement back in the day when there were not very many women on the job at all. they used to call me out all the time to deal with victims that needed to be interviewed who were women, especially sexual assault victims, but any kind of female victim. Sometimes they just really wanted to talk to a woman.
Yeah.
And so they would call me. And so I got involved in, helping the detectives with murder investigations. I only had like a few months on the job. And then other times they would call me to translate when the victims only spoke Spanish. And so, again, I fortunately for me, as far as my development in my career, I learned some things that a rookie cop would never get to learn because of those two things. And so everything from death notifications to burglary reports to murders to sexual assaults to all kinds of other things, even car crashes. I mean, and so because of that, I feel like I can really get in touch with the victim and I can portray the victim's feelings. I think sometimes in crime fiction, I don't hear it as much now, but earlier, you used to hear people talk about, oh, you shouldn't make crime entertainment and it's like disrespectful to do that. I believe that I am giving the victim a voice and that I am explaining what happens and the impact. I never minimize the impact. So when there's a murder, I always explain about how, the surviving family and friends, the impact it has on them, sometimes generationally, and other types of things that happen as well. Especially a couple of my books, people have been like, oh my gosh, how did you write that victim's trauma so well? It's really, again, I'm just pulling from my own experience and really giving voice to that and that person's emotions. If you have empathy, you can really tap into that.
I would imagine that must, people who write this without your experiences will have trauma, moments when you're writing stuff. I hope folks understand that when you write really difficult stuff, it affects you as a writer.
Yes.
But as a human being, to have absorbed all of that over the course of a career, I can only imagine that impacts you as a human being.
It absolutely does. It really does. And there's always a part, I mean, there are, sort of people out there that I will carry with me in my heart always, and cases that I can never forget. And I think that it's important to portray that in an accurate way in order to honor the victims. And the other thing I do as well is I also honor the police who do it. As an example, when you were doing the introduction, you mentioned I had gone to the FBI National Academy at Quantico. That is something that they do for police executives around the world. We go there, you live on campus for 3 months and you study, with the FBI. When you're finished, you get 17 credit hours from the University of Virginia. It is that intense.
Wow.
But one of the courses that I took was with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, their BAU. And when I later then wrote, one of my trilogies was about that unit. And when I wrote that, it really was kind of my honoring them. Those agents, they have a really high divorce rate, a really high stress rate. One of the very first agents that got involved with doing it to help create the unit, I mean, he had like a massive heart attack from all the stress and everything. It is incredibly stressful because they are studying like serial killers and, all that. And they shared all that with us. So, and because we're in law enforcement, I mean, they held nothing back. It wasn't like anything was blurred out. I mean, we saw all the photographs and then we heard the recordings of their interviews and everything. And I mean, some of that stuff is, I will never forget. I can't unsee that.
Right.
But I wanted to honor the people who really sacrifice their life, their happiness, their health to help get predators off the street. And so I show that as well in the books.
Which is, again, can be so stereotypical in some hands, but you're bringing humanity to it. I mean, this is the humanity of being a police officer, humanity of being a victim, the humanity of everything. I have heard from folks who do forensics that television and movies and short, short series are, cause expectations on juries and in other places of, oh, you can get DNA results in 2 days if you know, or you can do this, or, oh, this is possible, or this will stand up in court. Do you, as a fiction writer, I can understand the desire to, like, if we make this as long as it really takes, the timeline for this book is going to be 9 months instead of the 2 weeks I want to make it in. But tell me about how you balance that as a fiction writer, but also as somebody who really knows that this can be a slow process in order to build a case and make things happen.
Not just for forensics, that is definitely one part of it that I'll describe, but also police procedure in general.
Yeah.
I have to take liberties. It's funny. It's the kind of thing that it used to drive me crazy when I was on the job. You watch TV and, it's like the officer gets in a shooting and then like they're immediately running around doing the next thing and then the next thing. And in reality, especially nowadays, you get involved in a shooting and you're sidelined for like at least a couple of weeks, maybe a month, while they do an entire investigation, a criminal investigation, a civil investigation, an administrative investigation. I mean, you have like 3 parallel investigations into everything you did and all that. You're sidelined. You're not continuing on running around, the streets, doing whatever. No. So understanding that, I realized that I needed to make some adjustments because, again, I'm writing thrillers. They have to be fast paced. We can't have the person sidelined. So I learned a couple of techniques, and this also works with forensics as well. Either sometimes it'll be a case where I won't have the officer or the detective or the agent get involved in a shooting until like the climax of the story. So then it wraps up pretty quickly afterward. Because also my stories take place usually over just a few days. They don't go on for months. So it's all condensed. That's one technique. Another one is if they have some involvement or connection to the case, or they're involved in a shooting or some other procedural, because again, I will have it so that they may be sidelined per procedure, but then immediately get sucked back in due to things beyond their control. And, the department or the agency realizes that they have to pull the person back in. They have to make an exception or whatever. And I come up with like a plausible reason as to why that would be a deviation from the norm. And I think I have managed to get away with it because I have a lot of cops that they write to me and they're like, we love it. It's totally real. We're good with it. So I know I'm not going completely off the rails. And the other thing I think that's important to think about with this is when you do need to take shortcuts, whether you are, let's say you're an attorney and you want to write a legal thriller, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to understand that, a court case, oh my gosh, it meanders for months and years. You're going to condense everything. So, it's similar. Or if you're writing a medical thriller and you're a doctor or a nurse, you have to, and I think that the trick there is it's a lot harder. It's a lot of work, but you have to literally think about how could I make this happen in a way that's realistic. And another example I give, and I think it's important, is pretty much you're never allowed to investigate a case that involves your family, your loved one, someone you care about, any of that. something from your own past, whatever. Of course, you're not allowed to do that, but those make the most compelling cases. I mean, if I was writing
Yeah.
in reality, the captain would call the detective in to his office or her office and say, you're off the case, and okay, and that would be the end of it. I mean, that's reality, but that's not any fun. So we have to. So what I often will do in that situation is the officer or the detective may get sidelined, and then the killer will just come directly after them and sort of
Hmm.
pull them in, and then they're forced to, and then the department's like, we've got to get behind this and get involved with it or what have you. So you have to just think creatively.
And you've mentioned a couple of times that you write thrillers, police procedurals. Not all police procedurals are thrillers.
Right.
So, I mean, you're sort of doing a mashup. Tell me about what draws you to writing a police procedural as a thriller.
Hmm. Well, I've always liked, first, I guess I'll talk about how I view the difference between a mystery and a thriller. So I view it that like a mystery is where you try to the detective will come and try to find out what happened. The body's dead, now we have to go and work to figure out what happened. And I love reading mysteries. Those are great. A thriller is more trying to find out what is going to happen.
Mhm.
There may already be a dead body, but the killer's still out there and is presenting an imminent threat, and there's a lot of immediate urgency and danger, and stuff is going to happen and you have no idea what it is, and it's coming at you. So that's kind of the distinction. One of the reasons I like to write thrillers is because I love writing in multiple point of view. And the
Mhm.
thriller genre really lends itself to that, because another difference is in a mystery, not always, but a lot of times you don't have any idea who the killer is, and you go through and you find out along with Sherlock
Mhm.
Holmes, you're
Yeah.
you're discovering it along with and picking up the clues as you go. But with a thriller, it's totally fine, and as a matter of fact, this is how I write them, is exactly who did it. You may not know why, but you know who did it, and you will see many scenes from their point of view. And that's,
Mhm.
you ratchet up the tension that way, because you see how the two different sides they're getting ready to come to a head. Everything is, and they're each planning. And I have so much fun with that because, you know what the killer's going to do. You don't know what the detective's going to do. And then you know what their plan is and how it's going to go wrong. It's very Hitchcock, where,
Mhm.
Hitchcock talks about, the definition of suspense being, the ticking time bomb is underneath the desk. You do not know when it's going to blow up. Whereas surprise is they're in a meeting and it blows up and no one knew the time bomb was under there. So Hitchcock always preferred suspense. I feel like thrillers and multiple points of view really lend themselves to suspense as well.
Absolutely. And, so frequently the reader knows more than anyone else. So,
Yes.
they know that the bomb is under the table before other people, which
Yep.
is why you keep reading. I mean,
Yep.
it's a run at that. You co-wrote some books with Jeffery Deaver.
Hmm.
Tell me about, we're going to be doing a couple of panels on co-writing, and it's a fascinating thing. Tell me about co-writing, and because everyone I've talked to about it comes to it from
Hmm.
a different in a different way, has a different experience with it. I mean, it's something that's, I think, really interesting. Tell me about co-writing.
It was a lot of fun, and it still is. We're still doing it. Neither one of us had ever done it before. That was the first thing. And Jeff in particular had been well known for saying that he doesn't play well with others and he never wanted to co-author anything. And I had simply never done it, but he blurbed one of my books. And I think from that experience, he saw that our writing styles are extremely similar. We really do write very similarly. And before I even talked to him about it, I I'd been compared to him many times
Mhm.
by readers. So that I think is important, is that you have to have a similar style. If he wrote a cozy, I don't know how we would do it. Maybe we could, but it would be tricky. But anyway, so our writing style is very similar. And again, we both had never done it. And so we decided that we had become friends, and then we decided, you know what, let's give this a whirl. Let's give it a try. And another thing we did that I think is I love it. It's very special. And I will say, Jeff is just one of the most amazing, talented people. I have so much respect for him. But what was really amazing is that when we went to write, we decided to draw a distinction. You'll see there's co-writing and there's co-authoring. So co-writing is when you have the banner headline author and then the smaller one underneath, who maybe is writing part of a series that the headline author has created. That is not what we wanted to do. We wanted to co-author. So immediately we decided we would do everything 50-50. We would invent a completely new set of characters together, a new series. And I love this about Jeff. He made it such a point. He's like, our names have to be the same size, same point size. This is 50-50. We do everything together 50-50. And I mean, he has every right to be a diva. He really could if he want. I mean, he's like 50 million books, or 50 million books sold and 50 books. And I mean, he's a legend. He's known all around the world and everything, but he's not. And so when we wrote together, he's said this during interviews, and I have too, that we decided to make it a no ego zone. So we ruthlessly edit each other's words. And I was shocked that he was fine with that. So first we did the brainstorming together and came up with the whole plot. He is also a world-class plotter. He plots and he teaches courses on plotting that I would recommend to anybody. So he has it all laid out, but that's not set in stone. We totally deviated when we needed to, if something occurred to us. I think a lot of people, a lot of pantsers are like, I don't want to plot because I feel like it's taken all the fun out of it. It's like, no, it doesn't, because you can absolutely take a left turn and go if you need to. It's not a problem. So, but we came up with the plot, so we kind of knew what the story was going to be. And then we would each just start writing scenes and whatnot. And then to make it cohesive, we each went through several passes. And that's how, when you read the books, they seem like one person wrote them.
So did you write words he would edit and then he'd write the next section? Or did you both have a point of view that you were in charge of? Or how did that work?
The answer is yes to everything that you asked. I know it sounds crazy, but don't forget, neither one of us had done it. So we were kind of feeling our way through the process. Plus, it was different from the way I think a lot of those situations go. So it started with the plot, and then each of us would pick I want to write, the fight scene. I want to write the, this murder scene or whatever. And then also the characters. So it's kind of what in Hollywood they call it a two-hander, where that's got almost like two leads. So there's one of the leads is a female Latina federal agent, and I wrote most of those POV chapters. The other one was a professor, and Jeff, who is professorial at times, right? He wrote a lot of those, but we absolutely switched, and I wrote some of the Professor Heron chapters, and he wrote some of the Agent Sanchez character chapters. And then the bad guy, we both wrote those, and a lot of the other side characters. It was kind of like whatever we wanted to do. I mean, that is the beauty of having an outline ahead of time, is you can be like, "Ooh, I'll write that," And I would joke if I feel kind of shooty and stabby today, so I'm going to write the murder scene today. I'll get that out of my, uh, and then he would, but he's very clever and again, that's the other thing too, is you have to allow for these moments of inspiration. And you're like, you know what, this would make more sense as part of the motivation. And then we go back and sort of weave it in. It was very much a fluid thing. It's hard to even explain, but I do think having a blueprint ahead of time was extremely helpful.
Mm-hmm. I will. I will second your, if you can take a class with him, do it. He did when he was the president of the MWA board, I think he went to all the different chapters of MWA and did a day-long writing a thriller session for folks. And, I went, I don't write thrillers, but I learned so much. And also about structure and about, how that works. And he's a good teacher. So, yeah. I love hearing this. I mean, it almost sounds like you need to also have the magic of writing needs to work with your co-author so that there's trust, but there's like, we're sharing the same idea right now. So let's just, whoever can write it better and the other one can fix it, let's just go.
That is absolutely true. And the thing about it, I think that is also really helpful is there was a lot of mutual respect. And that's why we could declare a no ego zone and ruthlessly edit each other, as we say. And the other thing I think that is really important, and this goes all the way back to the humility that I was talking about early on, and this is an expression that Jeff has. He says that the readers are our gods. So in other words, as we're going through and we're doing the editing and we're looking at it, it is literally whatever doesn't serve the reader, serve the story so the reader will enjoy it, it has to go. And I mean, I had to get rid of like multiple chapters, and he did too. You have to be willing, because it's not about, amusing yourself or even each other with your cleverness or, this cool idea. It's about the reader. And, the reader is really the one that you are in service of the reader. They're the ones that make it all possible. And so again, if you're humble and you put that other person first, or the reader, the imaginary reader first, you can't go wrong with that.
Wow, that's advice for everybody to take, right? I mean, that you're serving the reader and you have to respect the reader. Yeah, that's great. I'm writing that one down. That's a sampler. Yes. Isabella, that's going to be a sampler. So let's talk about building community in this journey and what that has meant to you as somebody who, came to this as a second career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I knew I needed to build some community just because I had not been doing this. Some other writers, I mean, Michael Carita comes to mind. I think he wrote his first book. He was like 19 and in college or something. And
yes.
Became this huge bestseller, and he's mega talented. And I mean, he started young and he's brilliant and all that. That was not my journey. I definitely came to it later. And so I realized that having a community would be very, very important I needed to hit the ground running. In other words, it's almost like I knew I didn't have 30 years to find an agent and get the ball going. Well, the other thing is too, I knew that I wanted to traditionally publish. And right now, actually, I've sort of become a hybrid. And that's a whole different story. But a lot of authors do become a hybrid. So I enjoy the self-pub route. I enjoy the trad pub route. I love them both. But when I first started, I'm like, I need to be traditionally published because I really felt like I needed a publisher behind me because I had no idea what I was doing. Even though I had been studying the art and craft of writing for 5 years, I knew nothing about publishing. And so I knew to get it out there and get it through the editors and all that, I needed all that behind me to begin with. So, and that's totally fine. But the community is important. And that's one of the reasons I joined so many groups. And I'm still a member of so many groups because I believe in that. And a lot of people have told me that they're never sure if it's like, am I wasting my money? Am I wasting my time? And I'm like, absolutely not. And I found my first publishing deal at a writers conference, and I found my agent at a writers conference.
Wow.
Absolutely. And I had to get in line and pitch in both cases. And it worked. It really will, but you have to be willing to put your neck out and say, I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to take whatever feedback. And again, be humble about it, because if you're pitching to an acquiring editor or if you're pitching to an agent and they give you feedback, that is gold. You don't argue. You don't be defensive. You take that. I mean, they are literally giving you advice. Now, sometimes you may choose not to listen to the advice, and that's fine, but they're trying to tell you something. It could be wrong. It could be right, but it's their perspective. And you take that in, and then you make that part of your entire journey. All the feedback you get is you put it in the hopper and you use it. It's valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. And, such great advice for folks to, you've got to find people. I mean, it's especially writing is, well, unless you're co-authoring, but writing is solitary, but being published requires a whole community to learn, right?
Yes.
What
Yeah.
do you wish you knew then that you know now?
Probably, wow, it's kind of tough. I would say maybe not to jump on the very first offer of a contract that I got. It was an unexpected. I did not expect it. I had pitched at a conference to an acquiring editor, and I got an offer for a 3-book contract. That's amazing as a completely unknown, unpublished author. And at the time, I mean, the cart was way in front of the horse because I did not even have an agent yet. I had literally just put the finishing touches on my manuscript, my first ever manuscript. So I didn't expect all that. I was pitching, thinking I wanted to practice pitching, figuring I'd be doing it a lot. And then I get this big offer, and I'm like, oh, wow, what do I do? And I did end up later realizing I need an agent. My things are really taking off and starting to happen. And so that's when I went to a different conference and I got an agent. And it was really funny because I was before I was getting ready to pitch to the agent, they had an opportunity where you could speak to some very well-known best-selling authors for advice before you went in to go see the agent. And I was talking to one of them, and I told her my story, and she said it really in a funny way. She goes, "Man, I can't believe that you just took the first one that smiled at you. You didn't show some leg." And she was laughing. She's like, "You should have gone around and tried to see what somebody else." And I'm like, I didn't know what I didn't know. I really didn't.
Right.
And at the time, my thought was, everybody had kept telling me how hard it was to get a publishing deal from a traditional publishing house, and that and how hard it was to get an agent also. That when it happened that fast, I thought, no one else is ever going to offer me a publishing contract. I better take this one,
Yeah.
And so I did, and I wrote those 3 books. And as it turns out, those are the ones that actually it was a mid-sized publishing house. That publishing house ended up going out of business, and I was able to get my rights back. And those are the ones that I'm hybrid, working on. And it's really amazing how that whole journey has come around. But then since then, I went I got an agent first and then went to another traditional publisher, excuse me. And then things have continued to get just exploded, at a really big house. You have more opportunities and things, and it's been wild. It's been an amazing ride.
Yeah, the last few years for you have
Yeah.
just been,
Yeah.
rocket ship, which is terrific. I think what the point that you made is another great one, is for, when you're looking for agents and editors, you're looking for business partners. And it is hard at the beginning, or if you're mid-career without an contract, to not jump at the first thing. But you gotta trust or figure stuff out or ask for advice, or is this really the best thing for my career, for my long-term career, instead of the short-term gains?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's
And being, and that kind of offer it's very flattering and surprising. And I found that when I did mention it to the few, I mean, I hadn't even been published at all yet. So the few other authors I knew, they were all like, "What? Are you insane? Oh my gosh, you got a 3-book deal offered to you? Oh gosh, you got to take that." So I wasn't,
mm-hmm.
I think it would have been different if I had been, in a place where there was other voices as well. It was just, everybody was just caught off guard and surprised by it. So it happens.
Well,
Be ready.
but you also learned how to write a 3-book series.
Yes.
I mean, this is because that's
Yeah.
sounds easier than it is. And, you went through in a
Yeah.
way, that was sort of a funded way to really figure out how to do this.
And that is what the agent that I found, that is what she told me. She goes, well, first of all, she's like, "I love those books. They're like absolutely my favorites." And she's like, that it's good because, the first book in the series won an award, and the second book
Mm-hmm.
got a starred review from Publishers Weekly. And, so it's like, you were doing what you needed to do. You were putting in the work, and you were working hard and getting those things done. And, so you were ready to go to the next level when the opportunity came. So never discount that. So it's true. I'm grateful it all worked out.
Well, you seem to be to have that philosophy on a lot of things. Of this is may not be the journey everyone's on, but this is my journey, and steps at a time, and learning and building and being curious has served you very well.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And a big dose of humility.
So any advice or thought that you want to, as we're wrapping this really interesting conversation up, that you'd like, emerging writers or people? Isabella, here's the other thing. We don't talk enough about people who are mid-career, whose books, the series have been canceled, or their publishing house goes out of business, or it just doesn't offer them a new contract.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to stay published, but it's really hard. This is a hard business. Any thoughts or advice for folks as we're wrapping up?
Yes. When that original publishing house closed, I remember thinking at the time, just very briefly, I thought, well, and again, other publishers didn't want to pick it up because, it was like already 3 books into a series, and it wasn't on the New York Times bestseller list. So, I mean, it was doing okay, but it was, it wasn't setting the world on fire at that point. So I remember for a moment thinking, how am I going to come up with a whole new character, with a whole new story? But what I kept hearing, and I would say this to any author who is in the situation that you describe, whether you get this feedback or not, this is the feedback that I got. By that time, I did get an agent, and she was pitching it, and several of the publishers said, "We really like what she writes. We just want to see something completely different. Tell her to start over, do something completely new, and we will have a look." And I think if that is the case, like if you have a series that has been canceled or discontinued, or they're not picking it up, nobody's picking it up or whatever, that is the universe telling you, start over, back up a moment, reboot, and do not let that stop you if that is your goal. And I had to do that. I had to completely rethink everything I was doing. And actually, it was the very first book in the new series that I wrote that became a huge international bestseller and all that. And I think if I hadn't been forced to do that, I might have been comfortable just mid-listing in that same series. I didn't know what potential there was in being forced to reboot. So I know, and I loved my characters. I loved the world I had built. I hadn't really intended it to only be 3 books. I had intended it to be a long-running series, and I had all kinds of ideas of where to go with it. I had to let it go and just completely reinvent everything. And that pain brought all kinds of creative energy. And that is what I think life is like that.
Yeah, that's that's an amazing way to cap this great conversation of, be willing to reboot and to rethink and to have faith in yourself that you can pull it off, and that's part of it as well.
That's it. I didn't think I could come up with anything new that would be better, and somehow I did. And then I did it again, and then again. So, I now have 4 series.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can do it if you force yourself to. Get out of your comfort zone, force yourself to do it. I know you love your characters. I know you love your ideas and your story and the thoughts and everything, but don't let that hold you back.
Yeah. Great advice. Isabella, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for being with us today. Sisters in Crime is about community. We were founded to advocate for women crime writers, and we continue that mission by fighting for equity in the crime writing community. Sisters in Crime is an international, inclusive organization for all who write and love crime fiction, mystery, thrillers, and suspense. Join us at sistersincrime.org and make sure you subscribe to this podcast.